united free for liberty, together we'll always stand. Ladies and gentlemen, we can have a seat, and I may request the Commissioner for just 1 minute to welcome the Honorable Minister in a special way, as Professor has requested. So, Madam Commissioner, kindly to welcome our guest of honor, and then our professor will continue from there. Ladies and gentlemen, our Commissioner and Director at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Madam Juliana Naumo, is getting on the floor to officially welcome our guest of honor in a very special way to this World Culture Day, and then we continue with our program. Sorry for that little interruption.
Our Honorable Minister, Honorable MP, would like to most sincerely welcome you to the commemoration of World Culture Day. I would like to recognize our keynote presenter, Professor Waswa Walunya. I would also like to recognize Madam Elizabeth Chazike. I would also like to recognize Dia Kaba, and also to recognize the moderator. We would like to appreciate all those who have been able to join us today to see the impact of digitalization in the culture and creative industry. Honorable Minister, we would like to note that in your busy schedule, you put priority to come and be part of this event. I would like to say that I'm standing here on behalf of the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Abre David Chibenge, who has not been able to join us due to other commitments. Honorable Minister, we picked this theme because in 2020, the ministers meeting in Montreal, Mexico, by consensus agreed that culture should be the public good. And the main reason was that there is a need for us to look at the sustainable development goals, identify the gaps, and see how culture can fit in. Honorable Minister, it was noted that a culture contributes to all the development goals. However, the most urgent then was the goal 11, which has the indicators of sustainable and resilient and inclusive cities. So as we sit in Kampala City, which is one of the cities in the country, how inclusive is it? How does it integrate culture in all its programs, activities and projects, as well as in the cultural landscape within the city? So as we discuss the theme this year, I would like us to reflect on that and draw up recommendations that can help us to work together with all the institutions that are relevant in ensuring that our city integrates culture in its activities and is all sustainable for the good of our nation. We know that without culture, there is no identity. Without culture, you may not achieve all the sustainable development goals. So we must put our foot forward and ensure that culture is at the forefront of development of this country. Honorable Minister, we appreciate your time. I would like to appreciate, Honorable Minister, that recently you appointed the board of the Ugandan National Cultural Center after almost 1 year and a half. And I would like, Honorable Minister, to just request my Vice Chairperson who is here to kindly get up and wave to you. She's Fina Mugera. I don't know if the other board members are in. Are you in? Okay. So we recognize all the board members and all of you for your time and contribution. All the partners would like to appreciate you. Allow me now to get down and sit next to my minister as I brief her on the outcomes from the presentation from the ED, UNCC, we had already communicated, and then we had the Deputy Secretary General, Uganda National Commission for UNESCO, who also highlighted a few issues that later on we might be able to respond to at the appropriate time. Thank you so much, colleagues, for coordinating this World Cultural Day Commemoration 2024.
Thank you very much, Madam Juliana, for those very kind words to welcome our chief guest at this very auspicious occasion when we are commemorating the World Culture Day. Thank you very much. Feel at home, feel at culture. Today we are celebrating, keeping the mood, keeping the vibe of culture, and we go back after that commercial break to the keynote address from my very own Professor Waswa Balunwa. I hope now the slides are ready to listen in and feed our soul with what Professor has for us. Professor, over to you one more time.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Honourable Minister, I welcome you. Can you give some light? We need to look at this.
This is from Uganda. We've got these ones, so feel free to check them out. Let's go. Number 9, Lara Karaka dance. Among the quality of Uganda, this dance is a big deal. To get a girl, you got to be good at this dance. No kidding. Male dancers wear rooster feathers on their heads and carry extremely large gourds, which they rhythmically shake and pat with their hands. The women mostly shake their hips and waist frantically to show off their femininity. Such beauty and uniqueness makes the Lara Karaka dance a graceful sight to witness. Akogo dance. Is it just me, or this dance has the best music on the list? Akogo is a dance performed by the Peso people of Uganda. Akogo is actually a costume dance where girls wear beads on their waist in addition to traditional wear as a way to persuade their suitors. It is performed in marketplaces for entertainment as well as a call for attraction of the men. Oh look, another costume dance. I know, that probably is the last one. Number 7, Reggae dance. Performed by the Baturo people, these dances performed with vigor and skill intended to impress a woman of interest to pick out the right man. Oopsies. Traditionally, the man who does this dance is then joined by his family and friends as a way of saying, look, I got all these people who love me. Aside the show off part of the dance, it is also used to send quite a number of signals to the opposite sex to let them know how the other feels. Okay, enough of the costume dances. Next up, Ikitagiro dance. This dance is popular among the Bayankore and used as a medium to tell stories, celebrate good harvest, childbirth, marriages, and most vital of all, to show appreciation of wealth earned by work and meaning the number of cattle one has. The stepping on the part of the men who this dance is to imitate the back and forth movements cows make when walking. For the women, they majestically sway from side to side as they spread their hands across and above their head to symbolize the horns of a cow. Number 5, Zeno dance. The Bakiga people of Uganda are known to be highly energetic people, so don't be surprised by all the jumping and stamping. This is a recreational dance used to celebrate hard work and good harvest. Both men, women jump and thump the ground with hands going up and down to match the movement of the legs and also the cadence of the drum. This definitely is the record for the most calories burned while doing a dance. Now you might want to say this next one because it is tight. Number 4, Pakisimba dance. The Bandana people of Uganda get an extra star for doing a dance that seems super easy until you try it. And I have 3 predominant dances: Pakisimba, Wogolo, and Nakasa. All these dances involve a flawless circular movement of the waist and a tiptoeing movement of the feet, plus hands spread out from the shoulder. Depending on the type of dance, movement of the hands and feet may vary, but weights don't lie. They stay the same. The dance moves or patterns are dictated by the lyrics or song meaning, but mostly by the tempo of the song. Number 3, Agwara dance. If you want to sneak up on someone without creating a scene and doing so in style, well, Agwara dance fits the bill. The Lugara people who perform this dance are located around the borders of DRC, South Sudan, and of course Uganda. This is a celebratory dance done in imitation of the movement of hunters as they sneak up on animals. This dance was performed to prepare young men to join hunting parties as well as celebrate successful hunting trips. Number 2, Wala dance. Dance is done like no other, especially for this single reason. It could go on for a full day. This is one of the many rare dances among the Akoli people of northern Uganda. It was used to accompany their chief when leaving for the war. Today, it is performed when a new chief is installed and basically at other royal functions. Number 1, Kamena Ibuga dance. Kamena Ibuga is an incredible dance from the Busoga region in eastern Uganda. Kamena Ibuga is mostly done at weddings. It is a dance of friendship and unity. It involves controlling the upper part of the body while the weight moves. There is no surprise as the dance appeals mostly to the younger generation. Regardless, Kamena Ibuga is to perform on the occasion of the Harvest Festival of the Busoga people. Which of these dances appeal to you the most? Leave us a comment down there. Share them on Facebook, WhatsApp, and Twitter. As usual, was Murphy. And I'll catch you in the next video. Stay safe.
I didn't influence this, but they showed the Busoga dance last. Hailing from that area, but I believe maybe there's something else. I must congratulate all of you on this International Day of Culture. What did these videos do to you? First of all, I gave you identity. There's an identity. You have about 10 different dances. They identify people. 2, they also something else. They entertain us. So when you look at culture, unfortunately, I must say this, that part of our culture is going, and possibly that's the reason why we are here to see how can we retain that culture. And it's going primarily because of what we are trying to do, digital transformation, and yet it is that digital transformation that will safeguard it. If it doesn't happen, it will not be safeguarded. So we know what culture is. I don't think I have to explain what culture is in an audience like this. But they are called the beliefs, the arts, the laws, the customs, the knowledge, capabilities, and behaviors of a group of people. There are various ways in which you can define culture. If you go to the next slide, please. A system of learned and shared beliefs, languages, norms, values, symbols that identify a group of people. So as we saw these dances, this definitely we could see that there is something that identifies. You can tell this is this group, this is that group because of that culture. And as the person was speaking, he mentioned that some of them are done at weddings. So there is meaning behind the culture that we see. I wish there was something to control these things. That's a culture wheel. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Now, what I want to show here, the most important part here in my discussion today, is the types of culture. the non-material and the material. This is very important because one of these two changes, and one of these two is what we need to see much of it. And this is a constraint to transformation. And yet, the languages must be preserved. How do you preserve your language if you can't write it? So you find that languages are changing because of the foreign, the diluting that's coming out of different languages. So it's important for us, if we're going to preserve our culture, to preserve our languages, but it's too late for us to be able to write, to have a script. We would have to use what exists. So it's important to that extent, and I think if you see the languages, how many languages there around us, the chart there indicating which is the most spoken language, I think the Chinese and Chinese language, then Spanish, English, Hindi, Bengali. Hindi and Bengali, those are two Indian languages. These are some of the most widely spoken languages. And I don't know how much, I think we saw that maybe about 2 million people that speak this way. But nobody has taken record of that. So in terms of technology, the other important trait in culture is technology. What are those technologies that we are talking about? You will find, for instance, in the area of transport, if you go to Lesotho, it's a mountainous area and it's cold, so you find that they have horses, but you don't have horses. When you go to the desert, they have a completely different mode of transport. Countries, when your mother is 70, you take her to the home, earlier home, where they can keep her. That is the nuclear family system. So that's part of our culture here. But what is happening to us is that as technology impacts on us, we are transforming that culture, and we may lose it. We may lose the extended family. We may lose that social security. You know, people are worried about how do you keep old people? Old people, how do you keep your old people in your home, in your family? I'm sure you look after in one more year. You don't send them to home. I don't know there are old people's homes in this country. But that is culture. That's part of our culture. And then we have the parochial family system and the matriarchal family system. I think on the western part of Africa, there the women are the heads of the family. It's also transforming slowly, and there are reasons why. You know, there are reasons why that is the case. Then these social structures here, for instance, we have two pictures there. If you could put them, the picture of my Charazinga and the picture of the Tawaka. These are part of culture. These are the identities. This is what provides the identity of your culture. And these have to preserve for you to be able to understand who you are. If you don't preserve this culture, you know, you have a problem. Because who are you? What defines you? So our social structures have got those systems. Unfortunately, in this country, we have had challenges with the social structures. The British found a very organized Uganda monarchy. They used the system of Southerners, Bongolas, and troops around the whole country. And in 1900, they signed an agreement with Uganda, and they removed Kabaka's power. That happened. But the Kabaka continued. I mean, if you're in Uganda, you love your Kabaka. If you're in Soka, you love your Tanzania. If you wherever you are, if you have a king there, you love this king. Because that person is a symbol of your culture, defines and the custodian of that culture. So what we need to preserve of these symbols, what we need to preserve, because definitely technology is changing many things around us. But you know, Uganda, I think, 1993, we restored the cultural institutions, though we did not give them the power to tax, so they cannot have revenues. I think I would like to congratulate the ministry for the provision we put in for the cultural institutions. Very, very important. These are people who signify to the ordinary people that do this, and they can be their partners to government. But if they continue to be in the state they are in, they don't have that authority, and yet the people respect them, people recognize them. So I think that was a very important proposal, to be able to give them some minimum comfort. Otherwise, we now ridicule the whole culture that we come from. So I think that's a very important thing. The other is the institutions. One is style of government, the educational system, the laws in place. All these define culture. What is the form of government that you have in a country? You've seen Uganda move from the kingdoms to the elections in 1962, 61, 62. Now I'll ask you a question. Why did we have elections? Why did we have elections? I think I'm asking the researchers. Why? I mean, what was the motivation? And who told us that we should have elections? We had a wonderful system of our monarchs, So why do we have them? These are things for you as academicians to think about. That the weaknesses in our cultures lead people to exploit, So somebody imposes elections. Okay, why? Because they found you with a system. They found you with a system of government. So that system, if you see that the fact that this system was removed causes insecurity in the country, because the culture is no longer there. But, so the consequence is that you have a system where there are kingdoms, you have a central government, and now that they were restored, there's a question as to what their role is, especially when they are poor. But we hope that the funding of the cultural institutions will go a long way in restoring that dignity of our cultural leaders. And the cultural leaders play a very important role in stimulating growth and development in their communities. When they ask people to do it, the Chairman was asking people, go and be counted. And they will not know who the director of UBOS is, but definitely they know their king, and they're able to pick from there. So then we have customs and beliefs. Those of us who are old enough who read the book The River Between by William Wathon, he brought in this issue with the Kikuyus circumcised women, like our group, the Sabbath. Now, that's a culture. Now, some people will come and say that is FMG. But to the Kikuyu, it is not. It's a culture. Circumcision of men, for instance, you will find some people think that circumcision of men is for Muslims. So if that person is not a Muslim, he may find it offensive to say somebody has been circumcised. And yet, medically, circumcision is a good thing. Now, that is part of culture. That is part of culture. The circumcision in Buddhism, it's a ceremony, and you're not a man unless if you go through it. That's part of the culture. Now, is it good or bad? Should it be preserved or not? There are issues where, if we do not adopt the modern technology that we are seeing, we may actually lose those cultures. So while the loss of our culture is within, it is by technology. It is, we must hide within technology to be able to preserve those things that we feel should be preserved. So, and the cultural experiences here may be one major trait. For instance, the music, the literature, the poetry, the dance, this is the main expression of culture that especially we have with. And we've been enjoying dances here. We were able to identify, put a culture to it. We were able to see what different types of dances there, different tribes, different areas. We are able to identify, if you see somebody from South Africa, from Swaziland, you are able to identify that person. The Scottish in Britain, northern Britain, wear scarves, you know. That is the identity. So what we need to do, and this is a very important area, that digitalization is changing the way we look at things. It always has, and it always will. So for you, as a person with the culture industry, it's very important that you adopt it and be able to hide in it so that you can preserve it. Those things that we preserve as symbols of our culture, and music, dance, literature is part of it. The ED said one of the problems is the patronage, people don't show up. People are busy with their phones. You know, they would have appreciated if you transmitted this on Zoom and they listen in only to that bit of what we want. You know, and during COVID, we had a hotel in malls where I was principal then. I had been teaching online. I had an MBA program in Mbarara, Arua, Jinja. So I would teach from my office here. And just in the month of February, I received a letter from some people saying they no longer wanted to study online. I used to go towards the end for about 2-3 days and meet the students, but it was convenient for me to be able to teach them online. So a few weeks after that, they declared the lockdown. The president declared the lockdown, and we now had a problem. Those who had never been online started going online. And I think I ran the biggest class during the COVID times. Every Saturday morning, I had a session between 6:30 and 8 on leadership. And at one stage, I had 1,500 people. I had never seen that audience. Today, the audience is about 400, 500, every Saturday morning. I've digitized the way I communicate and teach. You have digitized the way you communicate and communicate culture. If we are going to preserve it, if we're going to preserve our dance, it must be digital. And we must take advantage of the equipment that we have. You know, I think some time back, you would see those bands, live bands, somebody's playing this, somebody's playing that. Today, there's one machine, somebody's on that machine that does everything. I don't know what it is, but I've seen it, doing everything. Technology has taken up many roles. So we, as people in the industry, the cultural industry, must find out what we need to do to be relevant. Because if we don't do it, we shall become irrelevant. But we must definitely adapt modern technologies if we're going to be continue to be relevant. If we don't adapt them, most likely we shall be dead. How do you know the story of treating twins in the Ugandan sober culture? When you bear twins, there's something that happens. Do you know it? Is it good or bad? Now, some of these things contradict with religion, but some people will still go ahead and do those things that they feel gives them an identity. They will go ahead and do those things that define their values. How do I treat all people? How do I treat my siblings? How do I treat the people in the village? How do I treat poor people? So all these come from the cultures that we have been able to experience, that we've grown in. So culture does a number of functions. One, it gives us an identity to identify who we are, and definitely we are different. And it's very interesting that while it gives us the identity, it also brings us together. When you find, if you go somewhere and you find an American, an Armenian, a Korean, they are definitely different people. And what identifies them is their conduct, their behavior. And at times, we feel so bad that this Ugandan no longer speaks, the accent is completely foreign, completely gone out of that culture. So culture does a number of things, defines who we are, gives an identity, it provides solidarity for us, it brings us together, and it defines our attitude to things, and of course it models our personality. Your personality is a function of your culture. Your culture is the beliefs, the customs, the norms. That culture gives you your behaviors, and your personality is going to be shaped not only by those things, but also the knowledge you get as you get educated. It keeps on changing and defining who you are. But there are innate values in you which are defined by culture, and it's very important that you understand what they are. So, we have a problem. There are problems culture is facing. What are they? Globalization and homogenization, exploitation of culture, culturalism, suppression, destruction, cultural colonialism. The Indians, the British were in India for 300 years, but they never changed them. They were here in Uganda for 60 years, and we are no longer the same. So what was the problem? It was because of our own weaknesses in our organization that we were able to adopt the foreign religion, the foreign culture, the dress, and all that. And Indian, you find him on the street eating a burger. At home, they sit down and the mother cooks on the city and they eat with a passion. That is a typical Indian. That culture is still in them. Go back to India, they'll wear a sari because it defines them. Now, how can we preserve our culture? So, the number of things, the number of challenges that we have in our culture, but primarily because of globalization and technology. Technology, this digital transformation we must make, is what is causing the loss of our culture, the loss of our values. So what do we need to do to be able to overcome these challenges? What's the way ahead? Can you put that slide, please? How do we preserve our culture? Growing up, I loved music, and this was my idol. Thank you so much for the wonderful music. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When I was growing up, I used to visit my sister who used to study at MOOCs, Makerere University Business School, and trust me, if I tell her that I saw what happened today, she would think I'm making it up.
Well, let's continue. My name is Andrew Kagwa Maiga. I'm an arts and culture journalist, creative writer, and I love this industry. My work today is a bit very easy. We'll introduce them because they're going to react to what the professor was talking about. Let me take the opportunity to stand here because it makes me feel important. One, we have two lovely discussants, and one I've followed Roland for quite some time. That introducing him becomes a bit hard because he has been evolving over those years. But one, he's a writer, a fellow of Ugandan Young and Emerging Leaders Project Fellowship of 2018. But besides that, he's the founder of Mawado, that's an African storytelling platform. And I think I've contributed a couple of stories to Mawado. Thanks very much for that. And Shazike Elizabeth, Associate Professor for the Department of History, Archaeology and Heritage Studies at Chambo University. I hope I've gotten that right. So, when the professor was talking, there were things I picked out which I do not know if you could actually react to. One, he said, he talked about when you do not adapt, you might become irrelevant. And from where I was seated, one, I love theater as an art. And when the lockdown happened and we were consuming a lot of work online, one of the things that I kept thinking about, much as we were seeing some theater online, it wasn't fun. Theater is one of those art forms where the audience is part of the performance. Like whether they do something or they do nothing, you feed off their energy as a performer. If theater is to adapt, won't adapting actually make it irrelevant? Just thinking, something you can think about. Though I could just hand it over to you. We could start with Elizabeth. I don't know how, if you want to present and finish and then he presents, or we can just have a normal conversation. I'm okay with the conversation, by the way. Oh, all right, let's get at it.
Thank you so much, moderator, our minister, and the other members in the House, all protocol observed. Who is Elizabeth Chazke? Elizabeth Chazke is, like you say, I would say I'm a teacher of archaeology and heritage. Sometimes I don't know whether I'm a teacher of heritage at Chambogo because I teach it everywhere, and I've been behind also starting the same at Makerere University somehow. So, when I've done a lot of work in this sector, and then I'll come back to your question. And this takes me to what Professor has just been saying. It's very hard for me to talk about what Professor said because he's my teacher. I'm a student of the leadership school. I attend it every Saturday, and sometimes when I'm like, oh, leadership is hard, but I know Professor on Saturday is going to give me the trick, and I know things are going to be okay. So it's very hard for you to speak after your teacher, but I'll try to just ask a few questions here and there. Because it starts by asking us, do we understand really what culture is? In my experience of working, especially through assessing impacts of development projects, oftentimes when you go in some of these areas, especially the oil areas in Hoima, you ask, or you tell them, I'm here to interview you about certain things about culture. The starting point will be, I'm saved. And I'm like, what does it have to do with being saved? Is culture about religion? Anyway, what is culture? And maybe that misinterpretation is something that we need to deal with. Then going to our moderator's question of adapting, will that make us irrelevant or relevant? We really need to move carefully as we go into the digital era. It has a lot of advantages, but it also has certain areas where we need really to watch out.
as I was growing up, I know that culture, especially, let me say, if you hear my name, I'm Chazke, where do you think I come from? The starting point every time I meet people, they'll start Okoba Chimuna, and I don't know how to respond. So does the name actually identify me with where I come from? That's an issue that we have. So as I was growing up, I know that there's what people call a kafeche. How are we going to preserve that identity that has to do with the culture in the digital era? As we put it out there for the public to view, which is very, very important because this is going to help us to make it accessible. It's one way of preserving it. It's one way of ensuring that it is documented properly. But as we take it out there, we need also to move carefully and ensure that as we take our culture to the public, it's not contaminated with other things. There's a danger of people even misrepresenting it as it is being recorded. How, I'm not really answering any questions, I'm actually posing more questions. How are we going to ensure that we actually preserve it in its right way? I think now I can hand over to my fellow discussant here. Maybe he can pick it up there to help us to see as we adapt. Are we going to make theatre irrelevant? The answer is no, it is not going to be irrelevant. We heard from the chair of NCC when he was presenting here that now the membership has increased. There are many who have booked this theatre, and so that means it is even becoming more relevant. People are now understanding the importance of theatre. But how can we encourage them to come? Look at our event, it was publicized, it is for free. How can we get those cultural ambassadors to ensure that people come and view, watch, and also take culture as something important? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. All protocol observed. My name is Roland Biagava, as they have mentioned. I have done many things, like the moderator said. My background is IT, so I guess I'm relevant on the digital aspect of things, and I'll get more into that. My background is IT, but I have had a lot of passion for the arts, so I spend a lot of time in the arts, trying to participate and see what I can also do to keep the culture going. So I am more commonly known for my work in the literature side. I work with Creativism, which is a project under the Center for African Cultural Excellence.